Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clearly, there's a great deal of concern on the part of all the members of this committee about the line that exists between the constitutional authority that the President has to defend our troops, defend our citizens, defend our country, to respond to attacks, to deter future attacks, and the like. And on the other hand, the declaration of war, a decision to engage in war conduct somewhere in the globe. And we've had a difficult time as a body defining where one authority begins and the other ends, or the other begins. And I don't know whether you have a description for us that'll be better than the current legislation that exists. But with that as an introduction, I wanted to get your thoughts on a couple of things. First of all, there have been some rhetoric, and I don't think it's advanced by any of the members of this committee, that implies that the President of the United States couldn't respond to an attack on U.S. forces or U.S. citizens without first getting a vote for Congress. I believe, Mr. String, you would concur that when there's an attack on our citizens, our properties, our armed forces, that there is authority for the President to respond immediately.
Yes, Senator, I agree. That is a flexible authority granted by the Constitution.
I guess the next question would be one which is a little different than that, which is not just defending our troops or our citizens in an attack, but if, for instance, a drone or heaven forbid, an aircraft were shot down by a foreign adversary, the question is, would the President, after due deliberation and consideration with his advisors, have the capacity to respond in like manner or in a similar manner to, even though 2 or 3 days might have passed, would he be able to respond, perhaps shooting down an aircraft of theirs, or shooting down or taking some other kind of hostile act to show that that was unacceptable on the part of the United States? Or would he require the approval of the United States Congress before he was able to respond in the event that for instance, a drone or an aircraft were shot down?
Thank you, Senator. So without getting into any particular factual scenario, the Office of Legal Counsel at the Department of Justice has identified a number of important U.S. interests which the President could protect using his Article II constitutional authority. These refer to important interests such as protecting U.S. persons, supporting allies, advancing regional stability. So in general, the President has some authority to engage in limited types of military action in a manner short of war in a constitutional sense. So that's an important bounding factor for the constitutional authority.
Can you be more definitive than that distinction, which is limited military response as opposed to engaging in war? Do you have a sense of where limited military response ends and war begins?
Thank you, Senator. It's a good question. How the executive branch looks at these questions, it's really a facts and circumstances analysis. Some of the factors that we would look at are the nature, the scope, and the duration of any military action, whether military action would last a matter of hours or a matter of days. So if as the risk of a longer, prolonged conflict increases, I think it would obviously get closer to the concept of war in a constitutional sense.
Thank you. We've also had some discussion recently, particularly with regards to arms for the Saudis in the conflict going on in Yemen, with regards to the definition of hostilities. And whether we were engaged in hostilities as a nation by virtue of furnishing weaponry to the Saudis, whether we might be engaged in hostilities by providing intelligence or providing aircraft refueling and the like. Can you shed some light on the administration's view on what does constitute hostilities and what does not?
Thank you, Senator. Another very good question. So The precise analysis as to hostilities, I think we should discuss in a different setting, but the one critical factor that we've talked about with Congress in previous communications is whether there's been an exchange of fire between U.S. and hostile forces. So that is one factor. There are other factors which we need to be in a different setting to discuss, but with respect to support to some Gulf partners, the administration's view, as I think you know, is that the types of logistics and defense services, defense articles that the executive branch across administrations has been providing falls well short of hostilities as that term is used in the War Powers Resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Romney.